Today is October 14th, 1975, and I'm interviewing Mrs. Rosalie Westreich in New York. Could you give me some background material on when you came to Germany, under what circumstances, who you were working for?
I was working for the Joint Distribution Committee. I joined JDC in Paris before the war, and after the fall of France, went to England and eventually came to the United States. And shortly after the end of the war in 1945, JDC asked me to go overseas for them, and I was assigned to Munich, Germany, and was involved in the displaced persons operation.
When did you get to Germany?
In November 1945.
And who were you working with?
Levi Becker
Fine.
was the director then.
And how long a period of time were you there?
I was there about 4 years.
So from November 1945
to 1949. I don't know the exact date.
Fine.
Think
Now, who was the first chaplain that you met? American Jewish chaplain.
Abe Klausner.
Were you aware of the type of activities that he was involved in?
Yes, I became aware of it very soon because we saw a great deal of him. He was around the office and even our quarters in the building that we shared with the local committee. And he was very much involved in the activities of the committee, and he had, even before we came, he had been assisting the committee, liberated, as they called it, a good many properties, and helped them turn into installations for the displaced persons. Somebody will take that.
Could we be more specific about the type of work that he was involved in? Do you remember any specific instances?
Yeah, I remember that he apparently he sort of took over I think it was a former convent, St. Ottilien, which was turned over into a sanatorium for TB patients among the displaced persons.
Well, that was before you came.
It was before I came, yeah. That was
Right.
apparently one of his so-called single-handed operations.
Was he well liked during the period of time when you first came over?
He
by
was
the people?
revered by the people because he had done so much for them.
Mm-hmm. You never heard of any dissensions on the part of individuals toward him?
Oh, ultimately later on, but there always is. But I think basically his how shall I say, his relationship with the committee was such that they really adored him, and he was, of course, he was very, very strong-willed, and did a great number of things that were maybe irregular as far as the army is concerned. But he helped the people. He helped us.
How was he able to help the JDC?
Well, through his army connections, he was a major, I think, in the army, and somehow his very presence was helpful.
Because the JDC people seem to deny the fact that the chaplains played a role, an important role in helping them. Generally, they felt that once the JDC came on the scene, the chaplains became to play a secondary role.
Well, I don't deny that. I think I agree with that, except that there were exceptions. There were chaplains who did assist, and Abe Klausner certainly was one.
And how would you characterize his role generally?
I don't quite understand what you mean, his role, his...
In other words, how would you, if you were writing this history of that period, how would you view him? How should he be characterized according to your view?
Abe, at that time, he certainly was completely and unselfishly interested in the welfare of the people. I remember one sort of a mass Seder that he organized for the GIs, which I attended, and which was a very moving experience, where he sort of assigned roles to some of the individual and answered questions and related the Seder story, the Passover story, to the history of the people present, the displaced person. Actually, you know, my memory really fails me. I don't even remember whether it was Seder for the GIs or whether it was a general's. No, I think it was.
Well, it probably was a Seder for the GIs
It
with
must
the...
visit local displaced persons population.
Yeah, that's
Must have
generally
been
how they
because
did
it was I remember a huge group. I'm sure it must have been a general Seder with GIs present.
What about the conflicts that he had with the JDC? Is there anything that you might be able to tell me about that? Did he get along with all of the people who were there?
I don't think he got along with all the people. I think, as I said, he was a very strong-willed person, and he may have done things that were perhaps outside of the rules laid down, as it were.
Why would he antagonize JDC people?
Or by perhaps doing things that were done that were not within the, as I said, prescribed. I mean, we had to follow certain guidelines, obviously, and he didn't find that he was always bound by those guidelines, and he did things on his own. I can well imagine that he antagonized some people, but I don't think that this was done on purpose, or that it was to the detriment of any of the people concerned.
Well, I know that he had some conflict with Leo Schwartz, for example.
Well, so had I, frankly.
Could you tell me something about Leo Schwartz? I know very little about him.
Well,
why would he be that type of person?
Leo Schwartz was a very
just between you and me.
Just between you. Leo Schwartz is dead, and you shouldn't say. No, Leo Schwartz was a very. He was interested a great deal in his own work, which was writing or anthologies, and I don't think he was as deeply committed to the people. He was patronizing towards them in many ways. And I don't really know about conflicts of Abe. I know that I asked for a assignment when Leo Schwartz had been there for a while, because I felt that he did not correspond to my idea of what should be done, how we should handle the displaced persons, the role we should assign to ourselves with them.
In what way?
Well, do things with them rather than for them. I felt was what we should do.
I think that was one of the basic problems of the JDC. The JDC was always viewed as the giving hand, never the one participating in it.
No, I don't think that was true for ZDC on the whole. I think it was true for some individuals. Among them, I think Leo, and that was one of the reasons why there was disagreement. I don't know how deep his disagreement with Abe was. Certainly there were two
Well, if you see his book, for
characters
example, The Redeemers,
yeah.
he gives no credit to Klausner for anything that Klausner did.
Frankly, I don't remember the book.
Well, it was written many years ago.
I know it was.
But the
long.
point is that the role of the chaplains is practically non-existent. There are certain things that Klausner did that are not attributed to him.
Well, that's then, in my opinion, it's quite wrong. He did a great number of things, and he certainly was helpful in many ways to the people. And I can't understand why I shouldn't be given credit for it.
Mm-hmm. What other chaplains did you meet?
Well, Herb Friedman.
You met him in?
I met him also in Munich.
Mm-hmm.
He was stationed in Augsburg, but he did come to Munich, and I had occasion to meet him in Augsburg at a trial where I acted as interpreter. It was a military tribunal.
And what was he doing there?
Oh, he was more or less an observer.
Mm-hmm. Well, was there anything specific that you could tell me about Friedman, what he was doing, etc., for the Shirit HaPleita?
Herb Friedman, he assisted the illegal immigrants
Right.
that came, as you know, through the Brecha. I suppose you are familiar with that phase. I remember meeting him one dark night, like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, at a railroad siding where a train had arrived, and helping to disperse the people among the various camps and other places where they could slip in without being noticed too much, because we were not supposed to receive new people. But of course they came, and they were as much as possible integrated into the various camps.
Aside from Klausner and Friedman, were there any others that you remember?
There was Eugene Lippmann.
What do you remember about Lippmann?
Well, Gene was also helpful in that aspect of the work, with the great deal was there, of course, to be done with the illegal, with the so-called, what did we call it at the time? People who came over the border, and because from Germany there were possibilities of getting them out much more easily than from other countries.
Was there anything else that you wanted to tell me about the Central Committee and their workings? Were you aware of what was going on in the Central Committee and the role that Klausner in particular was playing in that?
Well, I think he was, at the beginning, he was, I suppose, instrumental in forming the committee and helping form the committee.
Mm-hmm.
Having them set up, I suppose it was due to his efforts, I would imagine, that the house was obtained,
Right.
in which, as I said, we had the offices. The Central Committee had 1 floor of offices, and the JDC had 1 floor of office, and 1 floor served as our billets.
Mm-hmm.
It was furnished, and I wasn't there at the very beginning, but I believe that much of this was due to A classes efforts.
What was Levi Becker like as a director?
He's a marvelous man.
Was he successful in
Yes, I think he was. He could have been more successful, but I think there may have been some disagreement with other people in JDC.
Yes, there was a conflict that is alluded to in some of the reports.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting to hear from him exactly what that was, but I was wondering whether you were aware of what he had a conflict, I think, with Schwartz.
He had certain conflicts. I'd rather you hear it from him because I'm not too sure whether I could give you the correct interpretation of it. He was a very warm person. He was very well liked by the people. Unfortunately, he wasn't there long enough.
Did you think he would have been the type of person that would have been very useful in that position?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you think there was anything wrong in the way the JDC provided people to be there only for certain periods of time? There's a lack of continuity in terms of who was there?
Well, that is always very difficult to answer. People came for various reasons. The motives why people came, the motivation was a different one. Some people came out of genuine interest, and others came because they wanted to get away from a situation in which they found themselves, and this was an opportunity. And therefore they reacted differently. Although it was a very rough life, in that you were exposed to so many tragedies that you had things that most people had not heard about. Most Americans who came there, social workers or others who were familiar with.
They weren't prepared?
Pardon me?
They weren't prepared?
I don't think some of them were prepared for the terrific impact of the that some of the stories must have made on them. And there was relatively little that you could do about it, because much as we could do to help alleviate maybe their physical conditions, that isn't what they wanted. They wanted to get out, and they wanted to find their families, and and establish lives again. And until there was possibility to either take them to Israel or to Palestine at the time, or to help them emigrate to the United States, which eventually became possible. It was just sort of a holding situation. Yeah.
For the entire period?
No, not for the entire period. The immigration started in the Truman Immigration Act. I think that started to become active in 1947, I believe.
You mean with the Stratton Bill?
Pardon me?
The Stratton Bill?
Is that what it was called? I've never really referred to it as a Truman Act, but that's...
Well, there was a Truman Act before, but there were people coming in before, but there wasn't mass migration until later.
No, there was the immigration was... Although, I remember, if I could only remember the year, if I had my reports at hand, I might. When visas started being handed out on the basis of I think entitled to visas were people who, at the time, who had been in Germany on May 8, 1945, in given area, the U.S. zone, as it was called. And of course, we lived through the Palestine Commission's visit and report, when they made their...
Well, what role did the chaplain serve in this period of time that you were there? In other words, if JDC was involved in a holding action until there was a number of groups of people able to get out, what were the chaplains doing? Were they necessary? Were they important?
Some of the individual chaplains certainly were, like the ones I mentioned.
Were there any that you feel that weren't?
Well, there were some that we knew little about. They were around, but...
For example?
Oh, gee, that's very difficult to say. I remember vaguely a few names. Yes, some were active. They were in the camps. They I suppose, had services, assisted in services, and I don't remember any names. The guy's name, he has a pulpit here now, somewhere in Queens. Can't think of it.
Queens? I don't remember. Were you familiar with Judah Nadich?
Yes. Yes.
With his work? How would you characterize his role, or his activities?
I really don't know. He was... I really can't tell you anything about it, tell you the truth, I really don't know. That was, I was so involved in the daily activities that I have not too much didn't have too much contact with people on his level. I really don't know. I don't want to invent something that I just don't know.
I'm interested in...
No, I really don't know that, Joe.
Was there any area that you feel should be discussed that I haven't asked you about? About the role of the chaplains, their function during that period of time?
I don't know. I don't know. Maya Abramovitz?
Yes, sure, he's in Iron Beach.
I remember him. I don't remember anything specific that you did, but I know that he was there and he was around and he was active. Who else? Yes, there was this rabbi who's now in Queens. He was I think in the Frankfurt area. He was rather somehow involved in the activities. I can find out what his name was.
Do you think that in your reports you might have anything that might relate to this whole area? You mentioned that you have reports of this period of time.
Oh, yes, reports on the activities of JDC.
The JDC, but you wouldn't have mentioned anything of the chaplains?
No, I don't think so. Actually, they weren't all that, outside of the few I mentioned, they weren't all that visible. Mm-hmm. They were there, we knew
Is it because they weren't working, or because... In other words, I'm really trying to find out what they were doing there at the time, and they're telling me that they did a lot. JDC people tell me that they didn't do so much.
Well, not
maybe
that...
a natural prejudice.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I have certainly no prejudice. Some of my
No,
best
I'm not
friends
worried about
no,
it.
No, this is why I said if there were
still...
anything outstanding, I would most certainly remember it,
Mm-hmm.
But I remember those that were around without really knowing too much about about their activities. Max Brady was a chaplain then.
Right. Did you know anything about him?
Yes, I knew. I knew Max Brady very well. In fact, his wife worked with JDC for a while. He was in Bamberg, Eunice.
Oh.
His first and third. But they didn't. I can't say that they were a major force by any means.
Is that perhaps because your work and their work were in different areas? In other words, some people have tried to suggest that there was so much work there that Some people were involved in one thing, other people were involved in another activity.
Yes, and there was really not that much contact, daily contact, because we were so busy.
So-
We literally, since we lived in the same place where we worked,
Mhm.
we didn't leave the building for days and days on end.
So perhaps...
I remember a very strange incident. I just talked about it. I have a brother who was then in the army. He was a civilian attached to the army. He was in the psychological warfare division, film section, and he was stationed in London. And he came to Germany shortly after I had come on some sort of a mission. And I must have been in Munich then about 10 days or more. And I never left the house. Literally, my brother took me out to the officers' mess for dinner. He came to the house to pick me up, and Abe Klausner was there. And Abe has a very... he has a great sense of humor. And I introduced him to my brother, and he wore a uniform with the chaplain's insignia, of course. And he said, where do you think you're going? And I said, I'm going out to dinner. He said, who gave you permission? And my brother was aghast at the moment. He took it, for a moment he thought this was serious, and I was sort of,
In prison.
yeah. We just talked about it. My brother happens to be here on a visit, and I was in London a little over a week ago, where he lives, and so somehow, we got to talking about some incidents of the past, and this was one incident that came to mind because my brother looked through some old pictures and so on, and we had pictures of that evening and, subsequent meetings in that area. So,
So in other words, what I'm trying to really suggest that because you didn't see them as a major force does not necessarily mean that they weren't a force. You would agree to that?
a force maybe is too strong. They were there, they were active. Their major role, I suppose, was with the armed forces, and whatever they did with the civilian population was more or less their own decision to do.
Right, but some of them took a lot of time to work in that.
Yes. Well, I'm sure that many of them did. I'm sure that Max Braudy did, but he was in Bamberg, and we were in Munich, and we saw our representatives there from time to time, but the day-to-day work was so overwhelming
that you didn't see.
that really there was very little free time to talk about something that wasn't of immediate necessity.
Okay, fine.
I know that there was a local rabbi who may have been mentioned to you, Rabbi Sneg.
Right.
He was in contact with some of the chaplains. They worked partly through them, through the religious department of the committee. And then we had, I think, must have been in 1947, we had assigned to us a religious advisor, Saul Shapiro, who unfortunately died, I think last year. And then any contact with the rabbinate and with the chaplain would have been through Saul. Chaplains used to be, they used to come to the house. As I said, I remember Hamowitz, I remember, who else do I remember? God, there were so many of them, and yet I don't recall names.
Well, the main thing is I'm concerned if you saw them actually working and what they were doing.
not too actively, I would say. Although I don't doubt that they did.
No, I
So-
simply think the reason may have been that you were involved in your own particular area and that you didn't see beyond that because
Well,
of the,
my own particular area was almost all the activity of JDC,
right, but you're talking about a period when Klausner was very active.
yeah.
For example, there were a lot of things that he did, getting the Babenhausen, for example,
Mm.
or not, Bogenhausen.
Bogenhausen, the hospital,
Bogenhausen,
right.
That was
right.
involved. He was involved